Please, don't attend my sister's wedding, my husband James implored, his voice breaking as he stood in our bedroom doorway, luggage in hand. Why? I asked, the nail buffer I'd been polishing slipping from my grasp. After 4 years of marriage, I thought we'd moved beyond this insecurity. James exhaled heavily, his shoulders slumping beneath his custom-tailored jacket. I don't want everyone discovering you're merely a nail salon owner, he stated coldly. The word merely cut through me like my sharpest cuticle knife, as if my passion, my artistry, my livelihood was something to hide in shame. I'll say goodbye, he added, refusing to meet my gaze. I stood paralyzed, watching him walk through our front door, tears streaming down his face, not for me, but for his reputation, his family's standing. For the embarrassment he felt being married to someone who created beauty with her hands instead of manipulating numbers on spreadsheets. That moment shattered everything I believed about our marriage, about James Harrison, and about the life I'd constructed trying to blend into his world while desperately clinging to my own identity. Before I continue, I want to express my gratitude to each of you. If you've ever felt undervalued or dismissed for your passion, this story might resonate deeply. Follow Olivia's journey as she stands up for her worth in a society that attempts to diminish it. Subscribe to join our community of readers who appreciate stories of authenticity and empowerment. It's completely free and ensures you won't miss our next compelling narrative of resilience and self-respect. The irony wasn't lost on me. We'd encountered each other 4 years earlier at a fundraising event where I volunteered doing manicures for cancer survivors preparing for a confidence-building photo shoot. I was arranging my tools when James approached, his confident stride and genuine smile immediately capturing my attention. That's remarkable, what you're doing, he commented, observing as I transformed a woman's brittle, damaged nails into a beautiful, subtle manicure that made her radiate with newfound confidence. You're restoring something they thought they'd lost forever. I looked up, brushing back a stray strand of my own hair, to find myself gazing into the most expressive hazel eyes I'd ever seen. Everyone deserves to feel beautiful, even in the smallest details, I replied simply. We talked for hours after the event concluded. James shared details about his family's architectural firm, and I told stories about my nail salon in downtown Seattle, the modest space my grandmother had owned before she passed, leaving it to me along with her passion for transforming more than just appearances, but people's sense of self. Olivia, he'd pronounce my name as if it were something precious. The way you discuss nail art is like a sculptor describing marble or a painter talking about canvas. Our backgrounds couldn't have been more different. James was raised in country clubs and prestigious private schools, while I grew up in an apartment above our salon, falling asleep to the scent of polish and acetone. Yet that evening, those differences seemed insignificant compared to the connection we felt. Our romance was a whirlwind. James would visit the salon with coffee, watching in fascination as I worked. He called my hands artist's hands and bragged to his friends about my eye for detail. When he proposed 8 months later, I believed I'd found someone who valued me completely, profession and all. The first warning sign appeared during dinner with his family. The Harrison residence was intimidating, all vaulted ceilings and artwork worth more than my salon's annual revenue. His mother Vivian sat at the head of the table, diamond necklace gleaming under the chandelier light. "And what exactly do you do again, Olivia?" she inquired, though James had already mentioned it twice. "I own Elegant Touch. It's a nail salon downtown." "Oh, how quaint," she responded with a tight smile. "I suppose someone needs to perform those sorts of services." James squeezed my hand under the table but remained silent, offering no defense. "Will you be hiring managers soon?" his father asked. "James mentioned you're quite the entrepreneur." I blinked in confusion. "I'm not looking to expand right now. I enjoy working directly with clients. The hands-on creative work is why I love my profession." The table fell silent. Vivian exchanged a look with her husband that made my stomach tighten. Later that night, James suggested, "Perhaps you could be less explicit about doing nails yourself. People in my family circle respect business owners, Olivia. Maybe emphasize the ownership aspect more than the technical part." I dismissed it then as a one-time concession. Little did I know it was the beginning of James's campaign to reshape me into someone his family could proudly showcase at their social gatherings. Despite the warning signs, I married James in a ceremony that cost more than my salon's yearly revenue. My colleagues and clients, people who were like family to me, were seated in the back rows, while James's business associates and family connections filled the front of the church. During the reception, I excused myself to use the restroom and overheard James's voice around the corner, speaking to his college roommate. No, Olivia is working toward management. The hands-on stuff is just temporary. She has bigger aspirations. I stood there, beautiful in my designer wedding gown, feeling like an imposter. He was already embarrassed by me, already fabricating stories about who I was and what I cherished. But I'd walked down the aisle, spoken my vows, and convinced myself that love would bridge our differences. For 4 years, I attempted to be both the woman James wanted to display and the nail artist who found joy in transforming clients. I maintained my salon schedule while attending his business dinners. I wore the appropriate attire, learned which utensils to use, and smiled through conversations about investments and vacation properties, all while James gradually stopped visiting my salon, stopped introducing me with pride to new acquaintances, stopped seeing me as the woman he'd fallen for at that charity event. Until today. Until, "Please, don't attend my sister's wedding," and "Merely a nail salon owner," and the sound of our front door closing behind him. His tears were the final punctuation on our failed marriage, tears not of love lost, but of reputation threatened. I didn't know then that in 4 days my phone would be ringing constantly, that James, his sister, and their relatives would be begging me to intervene when their celebrity manicurist backed out. That my merely a nail salon owner, hands would hold the power to rescue or ruin the event they deemed too important for someone like me to attend. But for now, I sat alone in our house, surrounded by the life we'd constructed together, realizing it had been built on a foundation as fragile as glass. And like a shattered crystal slipper, no amount of forcing would make it fit again. The morning after James left, I wandered through our empty home, a Victorian revival in the Wallingford district that his parents had helped us purchase. The neighboring houses stood equally tall and pristine, occupied by surgeons, attorneys, and corporate executives, people whose professions didn't involve nail clippings on their aprons or polish stains beneath their fingernails. I remembered the housewarming party we'd hosted 6 months after moving in. A neighbor, Carolyn Wellington, champagne flute in hand, had cornered me by the appetizers. "James mentioned you work downtown. Which firm are you with?" Her tennis bracelet caught the light as she gestured. Before I could answer, James appeared at my side, his hand pressing firmly against my lower back. "Olivia's in the beauty industry. She's quite talented at management." Not a lie, but not the truth either. I noticed how he'd steered the conversation away from my hands-on work, my actual passion. That night after everyone departed, I confronted him. "You made it sound like I sit behind a desk all day." "I just simplified," he replied, loosening his tie. "They wouldn't understand what you do anyway." "What's to understand? I'm a nail technician. I own a salon. I'm proud of that." He sighed, that familiar crease forming between his eyebrows. "Olivia, in this neighborhood, people expect a certain trajectory. No one here works with their hands unless it involves a scalpel." I maintained my salon schedule despite our move, despite James's hints that perhaps I could afford to step back now. I refused to abandon the thing that made me feel alive, the transformation that occurred when a client sat at my table feeling one way and stood up feeling completely different. The power of that change was addictive, magical in ways James's world of profit margins and business launches could never comprehend. For months after moving in, I purchased new equipment for the salon's state-of-the-art manicure stations, improved ventilation systems, the premium gel products my staff had been requesting. When James saw the credit card statement, his expression hardened. "You spent how much on what?" "Investments for my business," I replied, preparing dinner with practiced precision. "The ventilation system alone will pay for itself in client comfort and staff health." "You could have discussed this with me first." "Do you discuss every business expense with me?" I pointed the knife toward him, not threateningly, but making a point. "The salon is profitable, James. This isn't frivolous spending. It's just." He ran his hand through his perfectly styled hair nails I'd meticulously maintained. "We have a certain lifestyle to maintain now, certain appearances." The word appearances became a recurring theme in our marriage. Everything was about how things looked, not how they truly were. James started working later, attending more business dinners without me. I suspected he'd grown tired of explaining away my profession, of watching me interact with the wives of his colleagues with my unmistakable nail technician mannerisms, noticing their manicures, sometimes offering advice. Then came the announcement that changed everything. James burst through the front door one Thursday evening, flushed with excitement. "Sophia accepted David Wilson's proposal," he announced, tossing his briefcase onto the couch. "She said yes." I recognized the name immediately. David Wilson was the rising star architect whose contemporary designs were featured in prestigious magazines worldwide. His girlfriend, Sophia Taylor, was a celebrated jewelry designer whose innovative pieces appeared on magazine covers and high-fashion runway models. "That's wonderful," I said, genuinely happy for Sophia, who had always been kinder to me than the rest of James's family. "When's the wedding?" 3 months. They're expediting everything to coincide with the Santorini exhibition." His eyes gleamed with an intensity one hadn't seen directed at me in months. "Can you believe it? A Taylor marrying into the Harrison family." Mom's ecstatic. Over the following weeks, the Taylor-Harrison wedding consumed all family conversations. Sunday brunches at Vivian's became wedding planning sessions, with discussions about media coverage, exclusive magazine features, and which prestigious photographers to hire. "Sophia's team insists on controlling the narrative," Vivian remarked one Sunday, dabbing her lips with a linen napkin. "But the exposure for the family business will be incredible." I sat quietly, wondering when a celebration of love had transformed into a business opportunity. David looked uncomfortable too, I noticed. When Sophia called during brunch, he excused himself to take it, returning with a gentle smile that reminded me of how James used to look at me. As the wedding drew closer, James's criticisms of my work grew more pointed. No longer veiled suggestions, they became demands. "Can't you at least take a sabbatical?" he asked one night as we lay in bed, backs facing each other. "Just until after the wedding." "Why would I do that?" "Sophia's friends include developers, investors, people who could help us." "Help us what, James?" "I have a career I love." "A real career, Olivia." He sat up, voice rising. Something befitting a Harrison, not painting nails all day like a teenager. The silence that followed was deafening. In the darkness, I felt the final thread connecting us snap. "Is that what you think I do? Paint?" "You know what I mean." "I transform people, James. I make them feel confident, beautiful." "What exactly do you do, besides worry about what others think?" The arguments escalated after that night. James started sleeping in the guest room. When we spoke, it was in clipped, cold sentences about household logistics. The man who had once watched me work with admiration now couldn't look at me without disappointment clouding his eyes. 1 week before David's wedding, I received an invitation to create nail designs for a major fashion magazine spread. I'd been recommended by a client who worked in publishing an opportunity that could elevate my salon's profile significantly. The shoot coincided with the wedding weekend. I didn't hesitate to accept. When I told James, his face contorted in disbelief. "You're choosing manicures over my sister's wedding?" I wasn't aware I had been invited, I replied, the bitterness I'd been swallowing for months finally seeping into my words. What followed was the fight that ended everything, harsh words thrown like daggers, years of resentment bubbling to the surface. James accused me of embarrassing him, of refusing to evolve beyond my little hobby. I accused him of marrying who he thought I could become rather than who I was. The next morning, I awoke to the sound of suitcases being zipped. James stood in our bedroom doorway, dressed impeccably as always, eyes red-rimmed. "Please, don't attend my sister's wedding," he said flatly. "Why?" I asked, though I knew the answer. He sighed, tension visible in every line of his body. "I don't want everyone discovering you're merely a nail salon owner." The word "merely" hung between us, weighted with all the disappointment and shame he'd accumulated over our marriage. "I'll say goodbye," he added coldly, not meeting my eyes. Then he was gone, the door closing quietly behind him, his tears the final punctuation on our failed marriage, tears not of love lost, but of reputation threatened. I sat in the aftermath, nail buffer in hand, realizing I'd spent 4 years trying to file away parts of myself to fit James's vision, when all along I should have been polishing my own worth instead. For 5 days after James walked out, I moved through our house like a ghost. I canceled my appointments at the salon, telling my assistant manager Mia to handle things. I couldn't bear to transform others when I felt so utterly broken myself. On the 6th day, I woke up with strange clarity. I looked at my reflection, hair unwashed, eyes hollow, and suddenly felt disgusted, not with my profession, but with how I'd allowed someone else to make me feel ashamed of it. I showered, dressed, and drove to my salon. The familiar scent of polish and acetone washed over me as I pushed open the door. Mia looked up, surprise crossing her features. "Boss, we weren't expecting you until next week." I grabbed my apron, tying it around my waist with practiced movements. I need to work. That day, I channeled every emotion into my craft. Each stroke of my brush felt like painting away James's influence. Every client who left my table smiling reminded me of why I loved what I did. By closing time, the weight on my chest had lightened marginally. The next morning, 2 days before Sophia's wedding, my phone rang at 6:17 a.m. Vivian Harrison's name flashed on the screen. I nearly declined, but curiosity prevailed. Olivia, her voice was higher than usual, tight with barely controlled panic. "I need to speak with you." "I'm listening." I kept my tone neutral, sitting up in bed. "It's about the wedding. Sophia's manicurist canceled last night, food poisoning or some nonsense. The replacement they found this morning was catastrophic." I bit back a laugh. "That sounds unfortunate." "It's a disaster." Vivian's composure cracked. "Her nails look dreadful, and the photographer for the rehearsal dinner is arriving in hours. They'll be in all the close-ups of the rings. Sophia is hysterical." The satisfaction warming my chest was petty but undeniable. "What does this have to do with me?" "We need you. Your skills." The word sounded as if it physically pained her to say it. "My skills as what, exactly?" "A nail salon owner." I emphasized the last words. Another pause. "Yes." I thought my profession was an embarrassment to the family. "Olivia, please," her voice dropped to a whisper. "This wedding is important to all of us. I'm asking for your help. I have a booking for a magazine shoot that day. A career opportunity." The lie slipped out easily. "We'll compensate you, of course. Whatever your rate is, plus consideration for the inconvenience." "I'll think about it," I said, ending the call before she could respond. I was making coffee when my phone dinged with a voicemail notification. David's name appeared on the screen. I hesitated before playing it. "Olivia, it's David. I know things are horrible between you and James right now, and I wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate. Sophia's threatening to call off the wedding because her nails look her words like they were done by a kindergartner with a crayon set that would horrify fashion photographers on international magazine covers. None of the technicians we've called can fix it. Please, if you could find it in your heart to help us, I'd be eternally grateful. I know my future brother-in-law has been an idiot, but this isn't about him. It's about Sophia, and honestly, I love her too much to let nail polish ruin our day. His sincerity gave me pause. David had always been kind to me, defending me subtly when Vivian made her cutting remarks. Unlike James, he seemed to genuinely love Sophia for who she was, not what she represented. The final call came at noon. James's name flashed on my screen, sending my heart into an unwelcome flutter. I answered without speaking. Olivia. His voice sounded rough, as if he hadn't slept. Are you there? I'm here. I know I have no right to ask anything of you. He swallowed audibly, but David is falling apart. Sophia's nails they're beyond salvaging by normal standards. Normal standards? I couldn't help the edge in my voice. That came out wrong, he exhaled sharply. What I meant was someone with extraordinary talent is needed. Someone like you. The compliment felt hollow after everything. Why should I help you, James? You made it abundantly clear how you feel about my profession. I was wrong, his voice cracked. I've been wrong about so many things. Please, Olivia. Silence stretched between us. The ceremony is tomorrow at 4, he finally said. Sophia's at the Fairmont Hotel with the bridal party, room 718. I said nothing but didn't hang up. There's one more thing you should know, he added, hesitation evident in his voice. My parents, they told everyone you're a hand model and jewelry consultant for high-end clients in Seattle. The revelation shouldn't have surprised me, yet it still stung. A hand model and jewelry consultant? They thought it sounded more compatible with the family image. A bitter laugh escaped me. So your family is finally desperate enough to acknowledge what I actually do, but only in private? How fitting. Goodbye, James. After hanging up, I sat motionless at my kitchen island, tracing the granite patterns with my fingertip. The petty part of me wanted to ignore their pleas, to let them suffer the consequences of their snobbery. But another part, the professional who took pride in her craft, couldn't bear the thought of anyone walking down the aisle feeling less than confident. Not for James, not even for David, but for Sophia, who was caught in the crossfire of family politics on what should be her happiest day. I called Mia. I need you to bring my emergency kit to the salon. The leather case with the Japanese nail tools and the special gel products in the locked cabinet. I've got a situation. An hour later, I stood before my closet, selecting an outfit that would be appropriate for a high-society wedding venue, but practical enough to work in. I chose a sleek emerald dress with a high neckline and cap sleeves, elegant yet understated, professional. As I packed my tools, each one sliding into its designated pocket in my leather case, I felt a curious sense of power. For once, the Harrison family needed me, not the version of me they wanted to present to society, but the real me, with my merely a nail salon owner, hands, and my embarrassing profession. I glanced at my reflection one last time before leaving back straight, chin up, expression composed. No one would guess I was walking into the lion's den with nothing but nail tools as my weapon. The drive to the Fairmont took 30 minutes. As I pulled into the circular driveway, a valet approached. I'm here for the Taylor Harrison wedding party, I said, handing him my keys. Room 718. My styling case felt heavy in my hand as I crossed the opulent lobby, rode the elevator to the 7th floor, and walked down the carpeted hallway. Outside room 718, I paused, drawing a deep breath. Then I knocked, ready to face whatever chaos awaited on the other side, and perhaps to reclaim something of myself in the process. The door swung open before my knuckles could connect a second time. Vivian stood there, her usually perfect appearance noticeably disheveled, mascara slightly smudged, hair coming loose from its chignon. Thank God, she whispered, pulling me inside with unexpected force. The suite was chaos incarnate. Garment bags were strewn across furniture, jewelry boxes lay open on every surface, and the sharp scent of polish remover hung thick in the air. In the center of the storm sat Sophia Taylor on a vanity chair, wrapped in a silk robe, her face buried in her hands. James stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, his back to the room. When he turned and saw me, the relief in his eyes quickly gave way to something else, shame, perhaps, or regret. He mumbled something into the phone and hung up, unable to meet my gaze. "Olivia's here," Vivian announced, her voice recovering its usual commanding tone. Sophia looked up, her red-rimmed eyes widening slightly. Even in distress, I could see why she was captivating in person, striking features, expressive eyes, a presence that demanded attention. Her nails, however, were indeed a catastrophe, uneven shapes filed with no understanding of proportion, colors applied with no coherent theme, and textures that couldn't decide if they wanted to be matte or glossy. "You're the nail artist?" Sophia asked, eyeing me with naked desperation. "I am," I replied, setting my case on the nearby console table. I met her gaze directly. "I'm Olivia. James is." Her voice trailed off, clearly uncertain how to label me given the circumstances. "Wife," I supplied simply. No need to complicate matters with impending divorce discussions. She extended her hands toward me. The agency sent someone they claimed was their best. Clearly, their standards are subterranean. I examined her hands carefully, assessing the damage from all angles. The situation was bad, but not irredeemable. I'd fixed worse catastrophes before major events. "I can work with this," I said, opening my case with practiced precision. The leather unfolded to reveal my tools arranged by function, each in its designated pocket. I noticed Vivian watching with barely concealed surprise as I laid out professional-grade files, buffers, gels, and delicate brushes with surgical efficiency. "Tell me what you were hoping for," I asked Sophia, meeting her eyes as I gently removed the damaged polish, mentally cataloging nail health and problem areas. "I wanted something elegant but unique, not trying too hard." "You know, I hate those overdone celebrity wedding manicures," she explained, her hands remaining still as I worked. "David loves my designs when they're simple but with a personal touch." I nodded, already formulating a plan. "I can create something that honors your aesthetic but elevates it for the occasion. I'll need about 90 minutes. "We don't have," Vivian began. 90 minutes or she walks down the aisle with these," I interrupted calmly, not looking away from Sophia's hands. "Your choice." Vivian fell silent. From the corner of my eye, I saw James shift uncomfortably. "Do what you need to do," Sophia said decisively. "Everyone else out, except." She hesitated. "Would you mind staying, Olivia?" "Just you. I need some peace." The look on Vivian's face was priceless, a mixture of indignation and disbelief. James appeared ready to protest, but caught himself. Within moments, they filed out, the door closing behind them with a soft click. As I began working, first repairing the damaged nails, then applying base coats, creating a subtle but stunning design, Sophia visibly relaxed. "Thank you," she said softly, "not just for the nails, but for the rescue from family suffocation." I smiled despite myself. Happy to help with both. As my hands worked, we fell into conversation. Sophia was surprisingly easy to talk to, unpretentious and forthright in a way that seemed at odds with her celebrated status. "So you're the mysterious wife," she said, watching me work on her nails. "David speaks highly of you, but the rest of them change the subject whenever your name comes up." "I imagine they do." I delicately applied a fine gold line to her ring finger. "What did they tell you I do for a living?" "Hand model and jewelry consultant for elite clients," she laughed. Which seemed odd since no one would show me your portfolio when I asked. "Because it doesn't exist." I met her eyes directly. "I'm a nail technician. I own a salon downtown." That's my entire career and my passion, and they're ashamed of that. She shook her head slightly. That tracks with the Harrison family vibe I've been getting. As I continued transforming her nails, creating elegant shapes, applying a subtle ombre effect with just a touch of sparkle on the ring finger, sealing everything with a durable top coat, Sophia shared her own story. She'd grown up in a Kansas farming community, daughter of a mechanic and a nurse. Her path to jewelry design had been paved with waitressing jobs, rejections, and tiny apartments shared with too many roommates. People see me now and assume I was born into this world, she said. They don't see the decade of struggle before the overnight success. I understood completely. Success that comes too easily isn't appreciated. Exactly, she nodded emphatically. That's what David and I connect on. He may come from money, but he's building his architectural vision from scratch, refusing his father's connections. He wants to earn his way. This surprised me. In our few interactions, David had seemed different from the rest of the Harrison family, but I hadn't realized the extent of his independence. As I put the finishing touches on Sophia's nails, a subtle, elegant design that would complement her rings and jewelry, durable enough to last through the ceremony, but refined enough to look effortless, the door opened. Vivian peeked in, followed by two bridesmaids who gasped audibly. Sophia, we need to. Vivian's words died as she took in the transformation. Oh my. Sophia extended her hands, examining her nails from different angles. The smile that spread across her face was genuine and joyful. Olivia, they're perfect. Exactly what I wanted. She reached for my hands, squeezing them. Thank you. More people filtered into the suite, the makeup artist, the photographer, the wedding planner, all staring with unconcealed admiration at Sophia's nails. I began packing my tools, satisfied with my work and ready to make a quiet exit. Vivian approached as I closed my case. I don't know how you did it, but thank you. Her words were genuine, but her expression remained guarded, as if complimenting a nail technician physically pained her. I merely nodded, snapping my case shut. As I headed for the door, James intercepted me in the hallway. He looked tired, the confident businessman facade cracked to reveal something more vulnerable. Olivia, wait. His hand reached for mine, but stopped short. What you did in there was incredible. I've never seen Sophia so happy. I did my job, I replied evenly. The job you're ashamed of. He winced. I was wrong. So wrong. I see that now. His voice dropped lower. Maybe we could talk after the ceremony? I think we could work things out now that I understand. Understand what, James? How valuable your skills are. The connections you could make in these circles. Sophia's friends are all industry people who need someone they can trust with their appearance. And there it was not an apology for dismissing my passion, but a recognition of how it could serve his ambitions now that he saw its value in his world. You still don't get it, I said softly. This isn't about connections or status. It's about respect for what I love doing. I stepped around him, my case in hand, feeling strangely unburdened. In trying to rescue this wedding, I'd somehow rescued myself instead. I slipped into the back row of the church just as the string quartet began playing the processional music. The historic chapel was decorated with tasteful floral arrangements, the afternoon sunlight streaming through stained glass windows casting jewel-toned patterns across the guests' expectant faces. No one noticed me. I was simply another well-dressed attendee, not the woman who had salvaged the day with mere nail tools and expertise. The ceremony proceeded with picture-perfect precision. David stood tall at the altar, his face transforming with joy when Sophia appeared in the doorway. Her gown was elegant, simple lines that highlighted her natural beauty, and her nails, my creation, caught the light as she held her bouquet, the subtle shimmer complementing her engagement ring perfectly. From my vantage point, I could see the Harrison family in the front row. Vivian dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief while her husband sat stiffly proud. James was serving as best man, his posture perfect in his tailored suit as he handed over the rings when prompted. Not once during the exchange of vows did I feel regret for helping. Whatever my feelings toward the family, this moment wasn't about them. It was about Sophia and David, who squeezed each other's hands as they recited promises that I hoped would prove more durable than mine had been. After the ceremony, I lingered in the church garden, reluctant to join the reception but not quite ready to leave. The scent of roses and fresh-cut grass filled the air as guests streamed toward the adjacent reception hall. "Olivia." David's voice came from behind me. He stood there in his wedding suit, looking happy but slightly disheveled, his tie already loosened at the neck. "Shouldn't you be taking photos or greeting guests?" I asked, surprised to see him alone. "They can wait 5 minutes," he approached, hands in his pockets. "Sophia told me what you did, how you stepped in when we didn't deserve your help." I shrugged. Professional pride. I couldn't let anyone walk down the aisle with nails like that, even if I wanted to. David laughed, then grew serious. "It was more than that, and we both know it." He gestured to a nearby bench, and we sat. "I want to apologize for my family, for how they've treated you, for how James," he trailed off. "You don't need to apologize for your brother-in-law." "Maybe not, but I understand him better than most." David stared at his polished shoe. "There's something about growing up in the Harrison family that warps your perspective. Everything becomes about appearances, connections, the right schools, the right professions." I listened as David spoke candidly about the pressure he'd felt growing up, the constant measuring against family expectations, the subtle and not so subtle ways their parents had shaped their worldview. It took me leaving, actually moving across the country for college, to realize how toxic it all was, he confessed. James never got that distance. He went straight from our father's approved university to the family business. "That doesn't excuse how he treated me," I said quietly. "No, it doesn't." David met my eyes directly. "Nothing excuses that. But I want you to know that not everyone in this family shares those values. Sophia and I certainly don't." As we walked together toward the reception, David asked a question that caught me off guard. "What are you going to do now? About you and James?" "I don't know yet," I answered truthfully. "But I know I won't shrink myself anymore to fit someone else's idea of success." The reception was in full swing when we entered, a live band playing as couples danced on the polished floor. I found a seat at a table near the edge of the room, content to observe from a distance. Within minutes, however, I was approached by a woman with a sharp bob and impressive jewelry. "Excuse me," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Lauren Maxwell, Sophia's agent. I've been admiring her nails all day. They're absolute perfection for the photos." "Who did them?" Before I could answer, a second woman joined us. "The design is divine. Are you the artist? Please tell me you work in New York." Word spread quickly. Over the next hour, I was approached by various guest designers, producers, photographers, all inquiring about my services. I handed out the business cards I'd tucked into my clutch, explaining my Seattle salon, but mentioning I occasionally traveled for special clients. From across the room, I caught James watching these interactions, his expression a mix of surprise and calculation. When he finally approached, champagne flutes in hand, his smile was the one he reserved for business associates he wanted to impress. "Seems like you're the hit of the reception," he said, offering me a glass. I accepted the champagne but didn't drink.